Hey guys, it's Danny. Well, another month has gone by, and here we are almost at the end of the year. It is time today to recap the orchids we had in full bloom in the month of November. Mind you, these are all new blooms, nothing will repeat from October, so even though there are more orchids in bloom, you guys know how I like to keep this format. I want you guys to vote for your favorite orchid this month, so the one that you like best in this video. Talking about favorites, let's just take a look who won last time, shall we? Last month it was a good month if I do say so myself, and checking the poll, well, oh well, look at that. The winner that you guys chose is the Rincovola David Sander, and you know what? I can agree to that. Number 2 is Aliceara Patricia Macaulay. How about that? I was not expecting it, but I can see it. Patricia Macaulay is super nice, and also the Cattleya chocolate drop. She has to be in the top 3. I just wish we could have smell-o-vision so you could actually smell the flowers. They are amazing. This month we have another great month. I'm really curious what you're gonna vote. We also have a mislabeled orchid. It's going to be a surprise. I don't know if I'm disappointed, but you'll see what I mean. But before we go ahead with the video, let me just remind you about our fundraiser campaign for the month of December. We put together a brand new line of merch with a super cute design, but the best thing about it is that all profits will be donated to charity. They will go directly to Doctors Without Borders to help them out in their humanitarian missions all around the world. Also, RepotMe.com will match and donate themselves 10% of the total donations we gather. And of course, we ourselves already donated to Doctors Without Borders. So check the links down below to learn more about our campaign and Doctors Without Borders, and of course, check out the merch store and the products that we put together for you. I'm sure you'll find something you like. Joey's in charge of stocks. She takes her job very seriously, as you can see. And by the way, ever since launch, we managed to raise about $1,500 already. That includes mine and RepotMe's contribution. And that makes me super happy. Thank you guys so much. I hope you're gonna like the merch. All right, back to the orchids now. First off, we have the beautiful Oncidopsis Cheyenne. It's one of my favorite quote-unquote Cambrias. This is a term we use here in Europe to describe complex Oncidium and generics. I have a video about it, check it down below in the description if you're a little confused. The reason why I like this orchid is, of course, the color. I like reds, I like oranges, golden colors, you know me and my warm colors, but this month we also have my favorite purple orchid in bloom. I know, such a thing exists. Back to the Cheyenne. This is not actually a registered hybrid as far as I know. It is a commercial name. Some big stores here in Europe have it listed as Cheyenne. I have the most success with it in bark and sphagnum moss because it does keep that ratio between air and water at optimal levels here in my climate. Bonus, the flowers are not fragrant. I know that some of these orchids can smell a little bit plasticky or even peppery. Well, with this one I don't really detect any type of fragrance. I will tell you though, it is a prolific bloomer. It creates multiple flower spikes, multiple flowers quite easily, so definitely I would go for this one if you see it in flower shops. P.S. It is a flower shop find. Next up, we have the Brassia Toscane. It is a spider orchid, and I know I don't have too many Brassia orchids in my collection. So I'm really happy to see this one in bloom. Honestly, I don't see much of a difference between the Cheyenne and the Toscane. When it comes to care and culture, all of my Oncidiums pretty much receive the same thing. They live in the same space. I do give them the same type of medium, fertilizer, water, etc. So I will share with you my Oncidium care tutorial down below in the description if you've never owned Oncidium. There are some things you should know, but I personally don't find Brassias different, not even when it comes to light. This orchid has been kept under artificial light, not natural light, and it was pretty sick when I got it, but it bounced back super fast and put on a pretty good show. Next up, my favorite purple orchid. There is a fine line between that cool-toned purple, which is a little too cool for me, and this beautiful, magnificent, vibrant purple that it's beyond words. I cannot tell you how much I love this orchid. I have loved it ever since I saw it in a flower shop many years ago, 7 years ago I guess at this point. I had quite a few of them throughout the years, but they were never vigorous for me. They had some issues. This one though, she is super vigorous. So I'm holding on to her like she's a treasure because there aren't many individuals which are so vigorous. I don't know, maybe she's Mary cloned from a different individual. I'm not gonna go into it. I don't know why this one is vigorous and all the other 3 that I had simply withered off. Anyway, back to the orchid. It has a beautiful, beautiful purple color, which is super rich and deep in reality. The lip is a little bit more light in color, and the fragrance is a little peppery like most Alicearas. I'm not a huge fan of it, but I don't dislike it, and certainly it doesn't put me off. Definitely, I would always try with this orchid. It's like the Nelly Eiler. I can never just give up on it once and for all. Beautiful orchid, totally recommend. I would not keep my hopes high, sadly, but totally worth the try. Next up, another orchid which I would totally always repurchase. This is the Oncidium Katrin Zoch, but this one is actually quite a lot more vigorous than all of the other Oncidium types that I ever had. Initially, it did not appear registered anywhere. The name Katrin Zoch would just circulate around like a rumor, and then one day, poof, we can find it registered in the RHS register. So yeah, it is official. Its name is Katrin Zoch. It is very similar to the Oncidium Twinkle in fragrance. It is very sweet. Can be a little sickening sweet. Puts out multiple flower spikes. Mine has 5 flowers on this pseudobulb alone, which is common for this orchid in good conditions. And of course, it takes the very same care as any other Oncidium. It is, I guess, a little bit closer to the Sherry Baby in the sense that is a little bit more tolerant to drought than an Aliceara, let's say. Other than that, I would just treat it like any other Oncidium. Here is a surprise. This is a NoID Oncidium that I found at a flower shop. It's the one that I told you had weird looking flowers. It looked a little bit like the Shellop token, but much tinier. I still did not manage to identify this orchid, so if you guys have ideas, do let me know in a comment down below. It is the Oncidium we made a maintenance video on. It was titled something like "This Oncidium Needs a Haircut." I don't know, it was a funny type of title. I'll link it to it down below, and here he is today. Still not looking in super tip-top condition. It was severely dehydrated and set back when I purchased it, but it is looking much better. I do have roots in the pot and it managed to bloom. Not very showy, but it's something. I didn't actually see this Oncidium very frequently in flower shops. I don't know if it's a new hybrid or just something that is not very popular. So yeah, if you guys have more information, I would love to know it too. Next up, the Vanda we had in bloom this month. Oh, what a Vanda. This is the Golden Dawn Keri Romani. It might be something with fox and then Golden Dawn, I don't know. I find it on the internet under both names, but I'm not entirely sure which is the correct registered one. All I know is this Vanda is superb. It is beyond words. That orange is so incredibly vivid. And it's not a solid color. You can see it has a really nice dotted pattern that I really like. And this Vanda actually came with a laminated picture of what the flowers would look like. And when I saw it, I was like, no, it's not gonna bloom like that. It's too good to be true. Oh, well, it is true. Beautiful Vanda, not fragrant. Flowers are not super big. It's the Ascasenda type of blooms. But yeah, overall, this is one of the first, let's say, special Vandas that I have blooming, if we don't consider the Mimi Palmer and my crown jewel, the Bangkok Sunset. Super beautiful Vanda, lovely to have it in bloom. Next up, we have an orchid which we know for a few years, but this year it has been registered. This is Laeliocattleya Hsin Bu Lady-sincorana. I'll show you the bluenanta.com page. Look at that. Not really sure if this is actually registered or in the process of being registered, but it's certainly a lot more official than finding this name on Wickman Orchids, or I'm not entirely sure what nursery had it with this particular name. Nurseries have it wrong sometimes as well. This orchid is very vigorous, it always blooms, but oh no, this year we had a sort of a windstorm is how I can describe it. We had serious winds at some point. They took me by surprise. I usually do stabilize my orchids very, very well, but each year it seems like the winds just outsmart me, which is normal. But yeah, this was one of the casualties. The orchid fell on the floor and it really doesn't look so good. I need to repot it. I just wanted to let it bloom, enjoy the flowers, and now I really need to go ahead and repot it because there's barely any medium left in the pot. It fell out of its pot. I just put it back in the hopes that I can keep it a little longer until I see those blooms. But she really did not like this disturbance. Cattleyas and roots, there is an issue there. They don't like their roots disturbed way too much. Anyway, you will have, of course, a tutorial for Cattleya care down below in the description as well. Easy to care for Cattleya, kind of unlucky, really nicely fragrant. It smells flowery and fruity, I guess a little citrusy, I would call it. And what do you know, it's another purple orchid. Next up, we have a Cattleya NoID. I like to call it Cattleya Orange Veronica because I received it from my lovely viewer Veronica. And guess what? This year's inflorescence is a little different than last year. Last year it bloomed very beautiful, but with just a simple or solid color orange flower with a red lip. This year I have a Epicatanthe on the sepals and petals. And P.S. I checked. Sepals is pronounced sepals, both in American English and British English. I have a Epicatanthe brush stroke, which is red on the margin, or actually the top edge of the sepals and petals, and I am living for it. I love Epicatanthe orchids. I thought this little detail will make the orchid identifiable, but it doesn't. I still don't know what it is. Maybe you guys have an idea. It smells a little peppery, but not necessarily like the Alicearas. It's a combination of a floral plus pepper scent. I guess I would say it's a little spicy. It is a pretty tall orchid and the flowers are a medium size. They're not super huge, but not very tiny either. Anyway, I love it. And again, Veronica, if you're watching, thank you so much for sending me this orchid. I thoroughly enjoy it. And the surprise this year is amazing. I'm really curious to see how the future blooms will look like. Next up, we have an oldie but goldie. This is Brassavola Little Stars, one of my first Brassavolas. I purchased it many years ago before I moved countries. I think maybe in 2014, and she has been doing as great as in the past, takes the very same care as any other Cattleya. Well, she's a Cattleya type, and as any other Brassavola, it produces light colored blooms, white and pale green, that are fragrant in the nighttime. They're super fragrant actually. In comparison to other Brassavolas that I have, this one produces kind of tiny flowers, but in great numbers. But I can see how it might not be for everybody because of that fragrance, which is rather soapy, but in a good way, and is really strong in the nighttime. Next up, oh boy, I have a Cattleya which I have been informed I did not pronounce correctly. So let's see. This is Epicatanthe Hsiang. Sorry for butchering that word. Gold Coast. And when I purchased a picture of this orchid, everybody went wild in the comments for this orchid. And you know what? She deserves it. It is the cutest little Cattleya. I would consider it a miniature Cattleya. It's not as tiny as Sophronietes, but definitely 15 centimeters tall. That's tiny. The colors are somewhat hard to replicate on camera. It really depends on the ambiental light. I would say they are a combination between a burnt orange and maybe with just the tiniest little hint of purple in them. And of course, that beautiful yellow edge and the yellow pattern on the lip makes for such a good contrast. Bonus, this orchid produces multiple flowers per pseudobulb. It isn't fragrant though, although some sources on the internet say it's fragrant. Mine doesn't have any type of fragrance, neither in the daytime nor in the nighttime, but I am seriously enjoying the flower show. This particular one was super sick at some point. I purchased it with a lot of new growth rotten, lots of leaves just completely mush. I'll link you to that video down below. And it took about 2 years to make a full recovery, which might sound like a long wait, and it was, but it was really thrilling to see how it grew and how the new growths looked better and better. So overall, not only do I really enjoy this orchid, but I really enjoyed the history that it has. And that makes it all the more special to me. Definitely I recommend it. It appears to be a vigorous grower, and if you don't have a lot of space, then definitely this one will suit pretty much any shelf. And the last Cattleya, this is my yellow NoID, which was in bloom last month as well with 3 flowers. This time we only have 1 flower on a different direction of growth. It is a smaller growth, but the flower is a little bigger than the other 3 flowers we had. It's actually almost as big as my palm. Mind you, I have tiny hands, but it's really, really impressive. I wouldn't say this is a perfumey orchid. It does smell like something, but it's nothing that you wouldn't expect. It smells like sweet vegetation somehow. Anyway, very, very pretty orchid. I don't have an ID, sadly. It was a flower shop find. Next up, a Tolumnia. Woohoo! We didn't see Tolumnias in bloom for a while. My Tolumnias are starting to do well and starting to bloom, as you will see in my next orchids in bloom in January. Oh my gosh, next year! So this is Tolumnia Snow Carmine, and I really like how the flowers arranged themselves this year. And somebody asked me, how did I manage to get this show? Well, I just didn't move around the orchid way too much. I just let them arrange themselves according to the light source and the direction of the light source, and they just found a pretty way of displaying themselves. I have 1 flower that is facing the other way, but that's okay. Another Tolumnia does the very same thing, so maybe it's something they do, but overall, it's a picture-perfect orchid, this orchid. I really like the bloom this year. I do have a tutorial on caring for Tolumnias as well. Check it down below in the description. This is not fragrant. Tolumnias are not known to be fragrant. Some of them are, but I think they are species. This is definitely a hybrid. Next up, we have the Psychopsis Mariposa. It is still blooming. Typically, this orchid blooms in warmer seasons, or this is how it behaved in Romania when I was living there. Mind you though, Romania has a much longer cool season than Cyprus does. So maybe that will affect it. It is still producing buds sequentially. 1 month is in bloom, 1 month kind of is not in bloom. It depends, but this month it has been in bloom with a beautiful alien looking like flower. It is not a fragrant orchid. It takes pretty similar care to Oncidiums, or kind of identical. And again, I have a tutorial on it, which I will link you to down below in the description. Next up, another first-time bloomer. This is Gongora galeata, which is so interesting. I love it so much. It actually had 2 flower spikes, but I did not catch 1 in full bloom. And this is because flowers only last a few days, like 3-4 days, and then they're gone. It's one of the shortest lasting orchid that I have in my collection. I'm sure there are others which don't last even 3 or 4 days, but this one I would love to have in bloom for longer because the flowers look so spectacular. They look like birds. Other Gongoras look like dragons. This one I think looks more like a bird. And it's also fragrant. And to my surprise, it actually smells like the description that I read on the internet. It smells like orange peels. You can definitely detect that, I guess, bitterness that the peel has, but it's definitely orange. I can see how it's not going to be the favorite scent for some people because it is unique. It's not really orange, but I absolutely love it. I love the smell of oranges and even orange peel. I have great memories associated with oranges, so I really like this orchid. I wish it stayed in bloom longer. I will be sure to make a care tutorial at some point. For now, I will just list some cultural notes on the bottom of the screen. up, oh boy, we have Schoenorchis tixieri. Now, I know, it's not how you'd probably read that name, but it is actually a Greek name or Greek-derived name. And hey, guess what? I have a boyfriend who is Greek. So I asked him how to pronounce it, and this is pretty much how you would pronounce it. I believe it is the tiniest orchid that I have. It used to live in the terrarium, but you guys know what happened. Mold infested the terrarium, so I had to disassemble that terrarium. Currently, I'm working on some new projects which are terrarium based, so stay tuned for that. But yeah, she's in bloom, not fragrant, and if you really want to see those blooms, you either gotta use a magnifying glass or use your phone and really zoom into the flowers. It's really, really, really tiny, you guys, but it's really cute as well. Next up, we have my Comparettia hybrid, which is actually a hybrid between a orange and a pink Comparettia. And look at that, I have a pink-orange Comparettia, which I don't know how to feel about. In reality, that color is a little bit more appealing than what I see on camera, but it's really interesting. Even if it's pale, I do have to say the shape and those reflexes of color, which I hope translate on camera, make this orchid quite special. So I've always wanted to have a Comparettia. I was not expecting the flowers to be so big. They are 4 centimeters in length or so, which is not tiny. So definitely I will be on the lookout for more Comparettias. I don't have much experience with these orchids, so care-wise, I will pretty much just tell you what I read on the internet because I don't have enough experience just yet. Next up, we have one lonely flower from the Bulbophyllum Daisy Chain crossed with Purpurascens. We had this orchid in bloom in the summertime, and the bloom show was a lot greater than what we have now. I don't even know why this orchid bloomed again. I guess one of the growths simply matured before the other ones and it was pretty warm, and I don't know, maybe it got triggered into blooming. This orchid usually doesn't bloom in winter time, but I'm not gonna say no to a pretty daisy looking like flower. The flowers are the main reason why I grow this orchid. It is a fun orchid to grow, can be a little awkward because it tends to crawl and spread out a lot, so it needs a basket or a wide and shallow pot like I have it. I am already thinking of a bigger pot, so it can be a little bit high maintenance. Flowers don't last very long, again about a week, but they are so cute and they smell good. I can actually detect a nice flowery scent from this orchid, which is great. Next, let's look at some Phalaenopsis. This is my Phalaenopsis bellina with what I believe the last flower of the season. This is a warm, or actually summer blooming, polychilous type of Phalaenopsis. So in winter time, it usually doesn't bloom. I have her in a setup which maintains temperature a little bit warmer, but I don't know if it's enough to maintain it in bloom longer. Anyway, I do like to give this orchid a little break from blooming and an opportunity to just focus on vegetative growth, which is the actual growth of the orchid. Blooming is not growth. So it's okay if this is the last bloom she will give me for the season. Next up, a hybrid between Phalaenopsis violacea and Penang Girl. I adore that color, and in this particular light, which has a little bit more blue, a little bit more red, these purpley or reddish colors are super accentuated. She's one of the reasons why I'm not in a super hurry to get another violacea. It is a violacea hybrid. It smells like the violacea. It looks kind of like the violacea, so I don't feel the need to get a separate violacea unless it's something that I don't have. But I really like this hybrid. Flowers are somewhat tiny for whatever reason, but she's really, really cute. And next up, the mislabeled orchid. This one was supposed to be the Aliceara Marfitch Howard's dream, but no, It is actually the Patricia Macaulay, and if you Google the Patricia and the marfage, you will see the differences. Yes, they can be similar, but it's all in the details, and I'm pretty sure that this is not the marfage, which I always wanted to have and I never had, and one day I will have, but it appears that I'm not in luck. Anyway, it's okay. I'm not very sad about it because I actually do have another Patricia Macaulay, which is a lot more vigorous than this one. This one has never been vigorous for me, so it might actually have an issue like fusarium. I don't know. At least I have another Patricia Macaulay, and it just gives me an opportunity to look for the marfage Howard Stream. That is the last orchid we're gonna see today, so don't forget to go into the description, follow the poll, and vote for your favorite one. And next year we are also going to determine the orchid of the year, which is always fun. Alrighty guys, so thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. I hope I gave you some ideas for your wish list. Don't forget about the fundraising campaign, the Orchids at Heart campaign, in which all profits are donated to Doctors Without Borders, links in description. And all that's left to do for me is to say have a great day. Subscribe to my channel for more orchid videos, tutorials, experiments, updates, and other fun orchid subjects. If you wish to support the channel, do consider becoming a member or visit the merch store linked down below in the description. You can also follow me on Instagram and Facebook. It's always nice to stay in touch there as well. And I'll see you next time. Bye!